I'm going to go make sure this stream's working in the other classroom, then we're going to get started, okay? Pull up these briefs here in the classroom, they're not on the homepage. We're going to add them afterwards, alright? You know, the 2 things I just added to the classroom. Okay, so just a little disclaimer, I wasn't your original instructor. Your original instructor got called away, so I'm going to teach this for you guys. I'm H1 Johnson. I'm over at NCIDC. I handle ordering all your advancement exams as the educational service officer. All right. As the class goes on, I'll talk more about educational options and some stuff available to you guys. All right. If you have any questions about TA or schools or anything like that, let me know. But we're here because I have people over here that will help you. All right. A lot of you guys don't know that you can come to the education center. The only thing they cannot help you with is putting your TA in. They can help you sit down and figure out a plan and get all kinds of stuff available to you guys that is being underutilized by the sailors. All right, so come over here and talk to these people. They're really good people, and they want to help you succeed in your career, career endeavors, college endeavors, whatever it may be. There's a lot of great resources over here. All right, so we're going to start with op-nav instruction 5119 Echo. All right, so this is safety afloat manual. Okay, so if they ask you which manual covers safety afloat, and they put 5100.23 golf, is that the right answer? No, because that's for ashore. All right, so this is the one you guys need to know. The 5123 golf is not even on your guys' bibs. All right, so this is the only one you need to know. All right, so B1. All right, I'm not sure what it is, but we'll find out together. All right, asbestos management. Everybody know what asbestos is? Bad, right? Causes cancer, causes a bunch of other crazy, appreciate it, bro. Crazy things. So there are 3 categories of asbestos work that can be performed aboard a ship. Navy policy is that asbestos-contaminated insulating materials will not be used on U.S. ships. All right, will not be used, but that doesn't mean it's already on there. Okay, because it is. There's no way to get around it. It's already on pretty much all the ships unless they're new construction. Navy Sea System comms cannot definitively establish that a ship is free of asbestos-containing materials. So they're the ones that go on there and make sure that they are free of it. But as you can see, they cannot establish that. All ships shall implement and maintain an asbestos management plan. And then the commanding officer shall ensure that all required resources and personnel are assigned to accomplish this plan. So if you see a question in regards to who's in charge of making sure there's an asbestos program, what's the answer? CO, right? So if the CO is on there, that's your answer. They might try to fool you by putting CO, asbestos management, whatever, safety officer, but the CO is overall in charge, all right? All right, so a ship may be required to implement and maintain an additional protocol, the protocol for an emergency asbestos response team. All right, so the EART team, so that we know asbestos is on a ship, all right? The only time we actually do anything is if that area that has asbestos becomes damaged. So if it's in good working order, most of the time it's in lagging. Does everybody know what lagging is? Anybody? Okay. So lagging is essentially what the pipes are wrapped in the ship to protect them from, you know, humidity damage, fire damage, etc. So if that's in good working order and it's not crackling or like falling apart and it has asbestos in it, it won't do anything. But if it becomes damaged, then this EART team will come and do a repair. And then there's certain parameters which we'll talk about. Any ship where a keel was laid prior to 1988 will be considered to contain friable asbestos thermal systems installation and shall therefore maintain an ERT. Ships in this category shall implement and maintain both ship's force and ERT protocols. So prior to 1988, they have to have an ERT. Okay? Anything after that, it's based on certain parameters, where work was done, etc., etc. Any questions on that? All right, so what was the year that's important? And if you're before 1988, what are you going to have? Yep. All right, so asbestos is a fibrous material or mineral that is known as a health hazard. Inhalation of asbestos fibers has been demonstrated to cause at least 2 distinct diseases, asbestos disease states, asbestosis and cancer. All right, so if it asks what are the 2 states that caused by asbestos, asbestosis and cancer. Sorry, guys. Most symptoms of this take 10 to 45 years after exposure. All right, so it's a long time. So most of the people finding out if they had issues, it's not occurring until they are well out of their time in the Navy. There's only one way to completely prevent the possibility of asbestos-related illnesses, and that is to eliminate asbestos from the work environment completely. Guess what? They can't do that. So they put them on a program, the asbestos management program, I think is what it's called. But essentially what happens when you come on the ship, you fill out an annual questionnaire, and if you deal with asbestos, then you're monitored. It's just like hearing protection, or the hearing conservation program. Any questions? All right, so 2 types of asbestos-contaminated material. Friable can be crumbled, pulverized, or reduced to powder under hand pressure, represents most significant health hazard. All right, so that's the one you're concerned about, friable. Okay, so that's damaged. It can create those particles that then can be inhaled, and then that causes you to have those 2 possible disease states, okay? Non-friable, this form of ACM, when dry, cannot be crumbled, pulverized, or reduced to powder by hand pressure. So I would think friable is important to know, right? Since it's the one that causes the biggest potential for hazard. An industrial hygienist shall survey all workspaces as part of the industrial hygiene survey. Okay, so your industrial hygienist comes on board once the ship is essentially ready for, to be put a crew on it and go out to sea, and they do the initial industrial hygiene survey, and then after that, I can't remember if it's every 5 or 2 years. I don't think you guys need to know that, but they come on every so often and redo the industrial hygiene survey. They're the ones that go around and declare what spaces are noise hazards, what spaces are eye hazards. They declare what spaces are asbestos hazards, etc., etc. That's all done by the industrial hygienist. Laboratory analysis should be used to test possible ACM. Ships having this capability can provide the testing. So some of the bigger decks have the capability to test their own asbestos-contaminated material with lab stuff and then send it out. Most of them don't, though. The Navy Shipyard, Navy Environmental Preventive Medicine Unit, and MTS also have laboratory testing capabilities. Really, your your Naval Preventive Medicine units will be the ones to help out with this. All right. Any PMTs in here? Wow. Okay. Identification by polarizing light microscopy or transfer electron microscopy is acceptable. So those are the 2 ways that they test for it, as well as outside of the lab. Okay. I don't know if you're going to need to know that, but good info. Navy policy is to eliminate asbestos exposure hazards by substitution of ACM with asbestos-free materials. The command shall not remove installed ACM which are in good condition. All right, so this is where it becomes confusing because it tells you the only way to prevent asbestos-related injuries is to do what? Get rid of it, right? But then it's saying, well, if we know we have asbestos-contaminated materials, but it's in good condition, we're going to leave it there. All right, so understand that. So if it says on your test, hey, you have asbestos-contaminated material, but it's in good condition, what do? You leave it, yeah. The command shall provide and display warning signs at each location where asbestos work is performed. Of course, that's common with any practice. All right, here's talking about the proper stowage. Stowage of unused asbestos-containing gasket material and packing stow in double heavy-duty 6mm thickness plastic bags or other suitable impermeable containers. So both of them you're going to store in a heavy-duty 6mm bag, double. Okay? That's for unused asbestos material as well as packaging and offloading of removed ACM. And then they want you to keep it wet. Adequately wet ACM during removal and maintain wet through disposal. Why do you think you want it to be wet? Yeah, so the powder isn't able to inhale and spread through the air, right? So if it's wet, it's less likely to become airborne. Dispose of it in a double heavy-duty 6mm thickness bags or other suitable impermeable containers. Must be leak-tight, not overfilled, and as well as contain standard warning label. Distinctly color code all asbestos waste containers red to ensure identification. So it kind of stays with your similar sharp stuff. Everything's in red, right? Hazard. Alright, so here we're talking about environmental protection. Repair and removal conducted at sea greater than 3 nautical miles from U.S. shores are not subject to EPA. So once you go outside of 3 nautical miles from shore, you're no longer subject to EPA guidelines, okay? Until you come back and you have to dispose of the stuff you removed. Now you're subject to the EPA guidelines, right? The ships with qualified teams to perform asbestos repair or removal may do so within 3 nautical miles of shore. So if you have an EART team, you can do removal within 3 nautical miles of shore. So outside 3 nautical miles, if you don't have an EART team, you can go ahead and do that. You won't be subject to EPA until you come back and take it off the boat. All right, any questions on that? And then TICOM, Industrial Hygienist Officer, or I can't remember what REC is, approval to determine specific emission reporting guidance. Okay, so TICOM is in charge. Everybody understand what TICOM is? That's ISIC above you. So essentially, most of you guys belong to the MEF, right? So if you're at the MAW, the MEF would be your TICOM. So if I'm on a ship, you know, USS Leyte Gulf out of Norfolk, Surfland, which is, you know, would be my TICOM, which is, I think, 2, right? 2? Yeah. Yeah. So that would be my TICOM. So that's who I would go to get approval. General training is required for all personnel currently exposed or with the potential of becoming exposed to asbestos. All commanders are responsible for training their personnel. Training shall be conducted at the time of initial assignment. So, INDOT, right? Everybody comes on board of the ship. They all get asbestos training, electrical training, egress training, all kinds of trainings, okay? And then annually following thereafter. Key one for this one, though, is initial. Record keeping. All shipboard asbestos records shall be transferred to a supporting shore medical activity for permanent retention as required. The supporting shore MTF shall establish a file for each ship. Sorry, this is really small. If the ship is decommissioned, all MTF files will be forwarded to BUMED. Alright, so all asbestos documents are maintained by the MTF. Really, all asbestos documents are probably maintained by the MTF because most of them go inside the medical record. And then, if that ship is decommed, all those files get sent where? BUMED. Okay. Each individual currently or previously working with asbestos or any other person he or she may designate shall have access to such records within 15 days of written request. So that's your release of medical information, right? So you can put whoever on there and then they can get access to your stuff. Most of this is going to happen when people get out because that's when they start to have the asbestos-related injuries and then they contact those cheesy lawyers that you see on the commercials, right? Okay. Tough crowd today, huh? 2 protocols. So ship's force details requirements and procedures for the repair and removal of materials that contain non-friable ACM. All right, so ship's force protocol is the one that deals with non-friable ACM. The EART, which is formally known as the 3-Men Emergency Rip-Out Team, details requirements and procedures for the minor repair and removal of friable ACM. All right, so EART is the only one really dealing with that super hazardous friable ACM. Okay. All Navy ships have non-friable asbestos. Therefore, all afloat commands shall comply with the proper protocol. So, all Navy ships have what at least in place? What protocol? Ship's force, right? Because they all have non-friable asbestos, so they all have ship's force protocol in place. It's only those special ships before what year that will have EART? Good. Your safety officer shall ensure the ship's force personnel are trained to accomplish prescribed work, and then they are also the ones that track any lab analysis records. Your engineering, repair, aviation, intermediate maintenance department head shall provide proper PE and identify personnel involved. Ensure ACM waste is collected and required and properly stored. And then your medical department shall implement an asbestos management something program as applicable. All right, so that's anyone who's dealing with asbestos will be on that AMSP program. All members that report on board, though, are required to fill out an asbestos handling questionnaire, initial one, okay? All right, so here's your EART, which is formerly known as the 3-Man Emergency Rip-Out Team. Each team shall consist of a supervisor, a cutter, and a cleaner. The following afloat command shall maintain an ERT. Any ship whose keel was laid before 1980, any ship whose keel was laid on or after 1980, not meeting the exemption. All right, so was it 88? Is that what the other one right? Was it 80? Oh, sorry, small. Okay, so 1980. Sorry, I'm up here thinking it's 1988. All right, so 1980. Any ships before 1980, and then any ship whose keel was laid on or after 1980, not meeting the exception. So in this instruction, the exception is talking about. So let's say we have a ship laid in 1992, but it went into Port Bahrain, right? And Bahrain sent on a lagging team of contractors, civilian Bahraini contractors, right? And they went and repaired some ships lagging, okay? We don't know what they repaired it with, right? So guess what? Now you have to have an ERT because you potentially have asbestos-contaminated material, okay? So that's one of the things that would make you exempt, all right? ERT can perform small-scale, short-duration actions or any other minor repairs as needed. A minor repair is anything less than 3 linear feet of pipe or 1 square foot of insulation on surfaces other than pipe. All right, so ERT can only perform what kind of repairs? Small or minor. Medical should maintain a list of the ERT personnel in case they need to be put into the command's AMSP program. More than likely, they're going to be in the AMSP program because they're dealing with asbestos-contaminated material. But if they check on board, they do the initial one, and then their EART, their names are just presented, and they never deal with asbestos-contaminated material the whole time they're on the ship, you think they're going to be on that program? No. The minute they deal with that ACM, now they're added to the program, okay? All right, so here's some sample procedures for when you're doing the actual emergency rip-out. Restrict access within 10 feet of the area. Use a plastic spray bottle to provide a mist, not a stream. Okay, so if it asks you what time, if you're using the plastic spray bottle, how are you going to wet it? What are you going to use? A mist, not a stream. Why do you think you don't want to use a stream? Yeah, it can break up, or it can hit it, wet that one area, but blow dust from another area. So a mist. Only a small sample is needed, approximately a ½ inch, and place the sample in a 4x4 inch polyurethane interlocking seal bag. Cover exposed to insulation with duct tape. Oh, this is if you're taking a sample in order to send it to the lab. All right, so what are you going to cover the exposed area afterwards? Okay, yeah. It's one of those weird questions they might ask you. Any questions? That's the last slide. Okay, so ships laid, their keels are laid before what year? 1980. All ships will have what type of protocol? Ship scores. Good. And we're talking about what? Asbestos, which is chapter what? B1. Good. All right. Let me pull up the next one. Alright, so we're still talking about OpNav instruction 5100.19 Echo, safety afloat. Now we're going to talk about chapter B4. Hearing conservation, everybody's favorite, right? So, the goal is to prevent occupational hearing loss and assure auditory fitness for duty of all Navy personnel. Noise-induced hearing loss is the fleet's #1 occupational occupational health hazard, and the CO shall ensure that health conservation program is established and maintained within the command. Okay. I don't care. Okay, I'll go fix it, bro. Let me see if I can fix it. Look at that little camera thing. Worse or better?
I can't really tell. We're saying in that class, we don't look at it.
Alright, maybe it's the projector. Yeah, go ahead.
19 Echo.
You're good. It's the hearing concentration. I just started.
Alright. Just remember, 5100, there's 19 and there's 23. 19 is afloat and 23 is ashore. I said it was hard for me to split up. So it'd be hard for somebody else. So maybe that helps. Alright. Specifically section B4, there's a lot of sections in this manual. And I mean a lot. I think we've done B1 through B7 so far in the last 2 cycles. So, hearing conservation goes to prevent occupational hearing loss, ensure auditory fitness for duty of all Navy personnel. I'm pretty sure everybody gets tinnitus by the time they get out, whether it's 4 years or 20. You can't disprove tinnitus. It's like back pain. Where does it hurt? In my back. So is it all the time or sometimes? Yes. Do you need hearing aids? Oh, no, I can hear. I'm thinking about 10% disability. You'll fix that right up. Noise-induced hearing loss is the fleet's #1 occupational health hazard. Which is funny. So you get on a ship, and who's been on a ship? Anybody been lucky enough to be on a ship? So you get hearing protection like everywhere, right? Yeah. You carry it with you, it goes on your uniform, and still not everybody wears it. The same thing is out here on the range when you get all brave. You shoot a 50 cal. Don't change your mind. Once again, it falls on the CO, right? Everything falls on the CO typically at a command. The IH officer shall annually certify audiometric testing booths installed aboard ships. Personnel who have significant threshold shifts are excluded from hazardous noise areas as defined as areas exceeding 84 decibels for continuous or 140 decibels peak for at least 14 hours before the scheduled test. So if we're getting tested, we have a massive threshold shift, and they go all quiet. Don't go in noisy areas for usually it's 24 hours ahead of time. Hearing protection may not be used to meet the requirement. So they can't go in an area with 84 decibels, put in hearing protection, and call it the same thing as being in a non-noisy area. MDR must ensure training is conducted during NDOC on proper noise reduction methods. Training will be conducted annually, as will for HCP enrolled personnel. So if they're enrolled in the hearing control program, they got to do it annually. If they're not, when you get here, be aware that there's noisy areas that you should probably let hearing protection. MDR will report STP shifts to safety officer as well as enter them into the web-enabled safety system. WES, you probably remember WES. They like asking questions on that, right? So we only have roughly 700 different websites to remember. So why not add another one? SAMS, we got eSAMS, we got MERS, now we got WES, a web-enabled safety system. Significant threshold shift is defined as hearing changes from baseline that average 10 decibels or more at 2,000, 3,000, and 4,000 hertz in one or both areas. Shifts in a person's total hearing level reaching 25 decibels or greater above audiometric 0 in the same ears and frequencies must be reported to OSHA. That means it's bad. Labeling of hazardous areas and equipment. You have to label all noise areas and equipment with NAVMed 6260/2. Hazardous noise warning decal and the NAVMed 62602A, the hazardous noise labels or other equivalents. So those particular things are NAVMed noise labels. Hopefully they don't ask questions on NAVMed noise labels. Noise abatement, the reduction of noise at the source is in the best interest of the Navy and its personnel. Will usually be accomplished during ship or equipment design, construction, or testing. That's the best way to do it. It doesn't always work. Personal hearing protective devices. Personnel working in a noise designated area shall have hearing protective devices available at all times. That's your ear pro. And wear them without consideration of the duration of the exposure. So don't just wear them when it's super loud. You can't always figure out what decibel it is just by listening. Or if you're working on a range and it's a particularly busy range, don't take it out in between when you're just shooting or your group of people is just shooting, because you don't know when somebody needs to pop off a gun, and that's all it can take, right? Okay, double hearing protection, where sound levels exceed 104. So it's 84 and 104, right? That comes up on several PQSs for warfare devices. It comes up on anything safety related. Everything's safety, 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 right? Especially with us, because we're generally in charge of safety. Hearing test and medical evaluation. So the two big forms. Baseline hearing tests will be conducted on all personnel upon entry into naval service and recorded on DD Form 2215. That's your baseline. DD Form 2215 is your baseline. DD Form 2216 is your annual. So be able to separate those in your head. Those are the basic forms that go in front part of your medical record, hopefully in order, not always. Okay, personnel enrolled in the hearing control program will have annual audiogram performed, documented on the 2216, and uploaded to the DOERS HC repository. I'm kind of hoping you don't have to remember that. Hopefully you just audio guy?
Yeah, or
oh yeah, if you're air, then that's loud as shit all the time. Am I allowed to say shit on YouTube?
you'll get demonetized.
You won't get demonetized because you'll get demonetized for violating. I hope so.
Play the Star Wars theme, they'll get really pissed about it.
Play it in the background. Other hearing tests performed for other reasons other than hearing conservation routine physical shall be documented on the SF600. So we're just doing one for whatever reason, documented on the 600. The training conducted during NDOC and the annual refresher. MDR will maintain a roster of personnel who routinely work in designated noise hazard areas. update semi-annually. It applies less to us, it's more about ship, right? Because the Navy's very ship-centric. But typically they have all kinds of running rosters when you get on ship. And that falls generally on the medical department. They gotta report it up to the CO. And it does get loud if you've never been down in the engine areas. It's insane. MDR shall also maintain a tickler file for scheduling annual audiometric exams, updated monthly. That's it. It is. All right, so main takeaways. The DD 2215 is baseline, right? 2216 is annual. Okay, that's single hearing protection at how many decibels? 84. Double at? Okay, you got it. And the system we use to track all this stuff? Less. Doers is the sure. Just remember less. Less is easier, he's a better guy. Any questions? Okay. Go ahead and run them quizzes.
Alright, we're gonna roll with this next class, okay? Again, I'm not your original instructor, so bear with me, because I know most of you are gonna course critique the fact that I read off the slides. I had no preparation, alright? So I'll have to read some of the information, then I'll give you my take on it, okay? View instruction 6230.15 Bravo, immunizations, chemoprophylaxis for prevention of infectious diseases. Alright, I've seen this on every exam I've ever taken, even the one I just took recently. So this is important. Okay, so this regulates immunization and chemoprophylaxis, up-to-date quality standards for immunization delivery, establishes electronic immunization tracking systems as the preferred immunization record, provides guidance for lost immunization records, credit, immunization credit for pre-existing immunity, etc., right? What is the key place that you guys record immunizations? So MERS, right? MERS is one, main one. Alta, yeah. And then the record. But normally in the record, you're printing out the MERS sheet. So. Alright, Chapter 1. This publication for Chapter 1 provides requirements for the military vaccine program, establishes general principles, procedures, policies, responsibilities. That's basically like your admin chapter, talking about who does what, who handles what. So Chapter 1 would be where all your roles and responsibilities are, right? 1.2 is references, 1.3 is terms and abbreviations. These are all good things for you guys to go back and look at, all right? Just so you understand. They're really going towards utilizing acronyms in the question. So it'll ask like, what is BTE when it regards immunizations? And then you're sitting there like, what the hell's BTE? I don't know. And then you're guessing. Alright, BT is nothing, by the way. I just made that up off the top of my head. But go back, look at the reference, look at the terms and abbreviations so that you can better break down those questions. There's a bunch of responsibilities right there. It's really, really small. So the Command Medical Authority prescribes the specific immunizations and chemoprophylaxis requirements for their units. But let's be real, VUMED delegates that, right? So even if I'm, the senior medical officer at the battalion, I'm going to fall under someone else who's going to prescribe what I'm doing, right? Command leaders ensure all their people get their shots and are up to date on their stuff. This one right here. Army is the executive agent for the MILVAX program. Okay? That's key to understand. Alright, so they operate the MILVAX office for education and training on IMS, synchronize, integrate, and coordinate IMS policies for all DoD components, maintain historical and future vaccine requirements, coordinate training and measurements of readiness, effectiveness, and compliance with the program, provide access to training. So they're the ones that handle MILVAX, so they're kind of like the overall be-all when it comes to training. So, standards. DoD follows recommendations of CDC and Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices and the manufacturer inserts. Standards for delivery are outlined in Appendix B. Vaccines will not be used beyond expiration date. All vaccines will be screened for contraindications. All right, this is all stuff that we already know and we do on a daily basis. IMS schedules and intervals. Once series has been started, it must be completed. Somebody put a little funny joke in there, I guess. Doses in initial series will not be administered at intervals less than the recommended minimum intervals or earlier than the minimum age unless part of CDC catch-up schedule. Meaning, so like Hep B is the big one, right? What is it like? Yeah, 6 months and then 12 months after that or something? Something like that. You know what I'm talking about. So you can't give it before 6 months. I can't give it at the 4-month mark. Okay? That's what they're talking about there. Has to be the prescribed amount of time. The big thing is making sure that we document this right. Because if we don't document it right in MERS, what's happened? You got a guy who comes in and you're like, oh, I'm giving him series 2 of Hepatitis B, well, the last 4 series were documented as series 1, and this guy's had way too many hepatitis B, right? Because that happens all the time. I know it happens on Greenside, and then especially now if you're in these medical home port clinic things they got, Greenside home port stuff, they will start a PCE on you. We know what a PCE is now, right? Yeah, so that means that you just given someone a vaccine they didn't need, even though you looked at MERS, you verified that they were on series 2 because someone else misdocumented it. So make sure you check, and check, all right? I've seen this happen way too many times, okay? So double check, at least 5 times. All right, simultaneous IMs use different limbs or separate by at least 1 inch. All right, so if I'm given more than 1 immunization, let's say I'm given 3, right? I'm going to use both arms to the best of my ability. Of course, I'm going to have to give 2 on 1 arm, and then it's going to have to be how far apart? So at least 1 inch. Priority based on threats in the area. 2 or more inactive vaccines can be administered simultaneously. 2 or more live vaccines administered simultaneously or separated by at least 28 days. So 28 days or how many weeks? 4 weeks, okay? They like to trick you up on that, okay? Screening for immunity, serologic tests can eliminate unnecessary IMs. We've really started to go towards this within the last probably 8 years, right? Originally when you came into boot camp and they would just test to see if you were pretty much immune to chicken pox, that was the only thing. And now it's like, oh, we'll test them to see immunity for everything, and then we'll go from there, try to save money, because immunizations are expensive. Live virus vaccines and TB testing. Some live vaccines may affect TB testing, which is also known as the Manto skin test. I've seen that on a test. All right. Administer live virus vaccines and TB tests on the same day. If you cannot administer it on the same day, when will the TB test be done?
4 weeks.
4 to 6 weeks after the live virus administration. All right, that's key to remember. So if it says person comes in, needs a TB test, as well as, this lot like smallpox, are you going to do it on the same day? No, it says you can do it on the same day though. Administer live vaccines and TB test on the same day. So if you can't do it on the same day, then what are you going to do? Right, so if it says he came in, he had smallpox a week ago, he comes in for his TB test, are you going to give him the TB test? It's been a week. No, you got to wait 4 to 6 weeks. Did I confuse you guys? Sorry if I did. All right, maintain the cold chain, right? How many people actually are the person that's working, taking the immunizations in here? Anybody? All right, so the Greenside guys, we got to go pick up a freaking special cooler from DSO that has like a temp check in it and whatnot. But how many people have actually got the IMS from, DLA in the box? Nobody? Okay, so it comes in this box, and those guys will drop it off whenever they want. So you better make sure your contact numbers are right. You might get this if any of you stay in long enough and you go to like a NOS where you're the senior medical department rep and they're dropping off your flu shots. Comes in a box, inside is a temp check. You got to pull it out, you got to push a button to stop it, and that tells you the temperature, and then you got to mail it off within like a day. All right, if that cold chain is messed up at all those IMs are like gone, and it's a crap ton of paperwork and it sucks. All right, just don't be the person to drop the ball on temps. Okay. Utilize the manufacturer guidelines for shelf life, diluting, disposal, and TEP recommendations. Validated storage devices include the Vaxicol, Vaxipack, manufacturer shipping containers, styrofoam coolers with at least 2-inch thick walls, or indoor therm insulating shipping containers. Include calibrated thermometer, track temperatures, pack vaccines in their original packaging, do not remove them, and then report all confirmed compromised vaccine losses through the service-specific channels to the military vaccine office. All right, so if somebody has an allergy, review package insert, defer those with hypersensitivity, and document in the record. Screen all women for pregnancy, consult the obstetric provider on IMS given, and then 2.6 talks about exemptions. You got two types. Medical includes any contraindication relevant to specific vaccine or medication. Can be both temporary or permanent. And administrative includes separation or retirement, 30 days or less of service remaining, and religious reasons. How many people have seen somebody get a religious exemption active duty? You have? 0? Yeah, I've never seen no one in active duty get a religious exemption. I know it's possible, but pretty sure it takes like an act of God. Literally. Okay? Not to be funny. I've never seen anybody be deferred for a vaccination because they're getting ready to separate or retire either. So I'm sure it's possible. They probably just don't ever show up to medical to get the vaccine, but I've never seen someone come in and they're like, oh, we'll just administratively do it. All right. So in regards to records, you're going to document all immunizations in the DoD and U.S. Coast Guard approved ITS, include date, immunization was given, dose, anatomical location of administration, lot number, etc. We all know that, right? It's our day-to-day practice. The electronics, I'm guessing like, I don't know what ITS is. I'm not going to talk about that. Printed report from the electronic ITS and CDC Form 731. Never seen that. SF601, health record, immunization record. That's a good one to know. DD Form 2766, adult preventive chronic flow sheet. Those are two things I would know. And then non-electronic records include deployment records, 2766 transcribed records, SF601, your MEPSA shot card, and a CDC Form 731. I think that Form 731 is the yellow shot card. You guys know what the yellow shot card is? It's the one where like yellow fever is only to be documented, have to stamp it and all that stuff. So jet injection devices used in accordance with FDA requirements. I don't think we use jet injection devices anymore. Anybody confirm that? Yeah, I'm pretty sure they stopped using those because there was like a contraindication where somebody, if they didn't do it right, it could cause damage to the arm. Emergency response requirements, of course, there needs to be a written plan, there needs to be training, and then anaphylaxis management has to be in place, and then observation period of 15 to 20 minutes after shot. All right? Everyone always tries to get out of the 15 to 20 minutes, but the CYA always, if you give the shot, maintain them somewhere within your vicinity for 15 to 20 minutes, because the last thing you want is somebody to leave, and then they're driving down the road and they have an anaphylaxis shock, and now they just got in a car accident. That could come back to you. All right? Mandatory info includes identification, lot number, manufacturer. This is if they have an adverse event, and then you're going to utilize VAERS. VAERS is where you report that adverse event. Okay? There's the website right there. Your program will be reviewed annually at the clinic level utilizing the Continuous Quality Immunization Improvement Process tool, which falls under what instruction that you guys talked about yesterday? Remember? Quality assurance, which is what? Good. Yep, 6010.13. All right. And how often are you going to check this, your immunization program? Annually. Right. Does this happen? Probably not. Probably not. Right. But it's supposed to be annually. Blood donation. For timing of immunization with regard to blood donations, clinicians will consider the policies of the Armed Service Blood Program Office. So, of course, certain immunizations exempt you from being able to give blood for a certain period of time. Just like if you go to like a malaria-ridden country and you have to take doxycycline for, a billion days, which sucks. You're exempt from certain times to donate blood. Can't remember the timelines, but there's where you find it. All right, so your personnel subject to immunizations. Accessions, which are your new joins. Military personnel, both active duty and reserve. Aviation personnel can be grounded for 12 hours with certain immunizations. Okay? Certain civilian employees, contracted workers, DoD child care facilities, school youth programs, and other populations, family members, detainees, etc. So how many hours can a an aviation person be grounded for a certain vaccination? 12 hours. All right, so this is talking about the Coast Guard. It's pretty much the same immunizations were needed. I'm not going to hit on that. It says they need yellow fever, but let's be real, yellow fever is only required if you're going to like Africa right now because it's super expensive and super hard to get. So chemoprophylaxis. This section does not relate to the treatment of diseases, but provides a brief review of military relevant diseases and associated chemoprophylaxis guidelines. Chemoprophylaxis is defined here as the administration of medication before, during, or after possible exposure to an infectious agent to prevent either infection or disease. Not addressed in this pub, chemical warfare related prophylaxis, radiation related, which you guys all talked about, chemical stuff the other day, right? P5041. Alright, so these are good to know, alright, because they're going to ask you questions like, what do you treat potential anthrax with? Cipro and doxy and anthrax immunoglobulin, alright? So, if I can't give the immunoglobulin, which is the anthrax shot, I can give them ciprofloxacin or doxycycline, right? I'm pretty sure Cipro is what's used after you've contracted it, and doxy is used to protect against it. Group A strep, penicillin G, influenza, prophylactic antiviral therapy, leptospirosis, we use doxy to protect against that. Malaria, you got your antimalarial meds, doxycycline, Malrone. Alright, I would know those, okay? Know what is used in order to stop something else, okay? Here's some more. Biological warfare defense. Combatant commanders provide Joint Chiefs of Staff with assessment of biological warfare threats to their theaters. President of Defense Health Board, Secretary of the Military Department annually identifies the Assistant Secretary of Defense vaccines available to protect. So, they're supposed to annually verify what vaccines are required to protect in that specific theater of operation, okay? I don't know if that happens, I'm sure it does though, but I'm guessing it probably doesn't change very often. Never seen anything like this on an exam, but still good info to know. Still like 10,000 mile info. Alright, so we're talking about investigational new drug status. For infectious disease threats for which only available vaccine or chemoprophylaxis products is in developmental status. The developmental product must be administered in full accordance with the FDA regulations at this in the executive order in DODD 6200.2. DOD may use products that have not been approved for license for commercial marketing as force health protection measures in combat settings, other military operations, peacekeeping, or humanitarian missions. So they can use products that really haven't been approved by the FDA yet, right? It's been going on forever. Let's think about back in the 60s when they used LSD on military members for whatever reason. You know what I mean? So it's all investigative and trying to figure out what works. You guys are guinea pigs, that's what they're saying. Commanders must request approval from SecDef to use these investigational measures, and members used must be voluntary. All right. If the IND drug is mandatory, only the POTUS can approve a waiver for the requirement under section 10 USC 1107. All right. So if it's required and you don't give consent, then only the president can give you the one to tell you that. You know what I mean? And then, of course, maintain records in the DoD approved electronic system if somebody's using an investigational drug. And then if you are a recipient of one of these drugs, they must provide you with the information required by FDA-approved IND protocol. So they got to give you what the drug is, all the possible side effects. You know, they're not just going to give you something and say, here you go. They have to provide you with that. If they don't, then that's your right as a patient to ask. Coordination, the Army as the executive agent for immunization program for biological warfare defense maintains program office at the U.S. Army, whatever. Okay, again, the Army is in charge of the immunizations, right? Just like they're in charge of the millvacs. They're handling the ones for biological warfare. Basically saying again that they can use specific vaccines that haven't been tested by the FDA in case of an emergency. The FDA may grant emergency use up to 12 months with potential renewal based on SecDef determination, etc., etc. Never seen anything like that on the exam. But that doesn't mean you don't need to know it. The FDA may decide that potential recipients of a drug under emergency use should have the option to refuse it. The President may waive this option for military personnel. Health record keeping must be in permanent record. Recipients must receive all the information similar to investigational drugs. Here's your appendixes. Appendix A. This is the references, required references, etc., etc. Appendix B, standards of military immunizations. And then there's your 8 standards. I can't really see that, so take a look at that on your end. I'm sure that's telling us what vaccines are required when. There's your exemption codes that you use. There's your administrative exemption codes. This is all stuff that you can find in MERS. Here's the immunizations for military and when it's required, broken down by force. This is good to print out, especially if you're on green side, and put it in your records room so that you guys can use it in order to check health records as people come in. If it says ACC, then it means they were supposed to be given that when they checked in. That stands for a session. All right? And then routine upon routine timelines. Appendix C is your internal control process. So your immunization program is supposed to be checked how often? Annually. Right? And then the instructions must be evaluated at least once every 5 years. Any questions? All right, cool. Go ahead and take the quiz for this one. We'll take a quick break and then we'll get back on it.
Actually, I've got a question.
Yeah, shoot.
Who can grant an emergency use authorization to use agents not approved by the FDA? You said something that the FDA knows that it's not approved, but the POTUS can waive it?
Alright, so we're talking about this right here. I'll put it up. So the POTUS. Wait, ask that question again.
Who can grant an emergency use authorization to use agents not approved by the FDA? So the FDA is the only one?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, right here. FDA may grant emergency use for up to 12 months.
Okay.
Is that one of the questions in the quiz?
Yeah, I tried to figure out how in the PowerPoint says something about the POTUS right afterwards.
So the POTUS can make it where military personnel can't, like we don't have a choice, we have to get it.
Okay.
So the FDA wants to say like, hey, look, they want to make, if they're going to use something like this, they want to make the people that are getting it have the option to refuse the opportunity to get it. But the president has the right to say, nope, all my military members, active duty reserve, whatever, are required to get that shot. They don't have opportunity to refuse it. Tracking? And it's the same for the investigational drugs.
The waivers you
And then also with the,
Alright, give H1 your attention. Alright guys, hey, listen up. I'm H1 Brookie. I'm over at Victor 22, second Martin, for you who are non-division. So I'm going to be teaching your next class on the Navy Augmentation Program. So you guys are taking a third class exam, but just to give you guys a heads up, when we start getting in here talking about BSO 18 personnel and augmentation, you're going to see it all the way up until your like chief's exam. So it'll be on every exam from here on out. So just pay attention. I'm not going to insult your intelligence because you guys all have every bit of this information already in front of you. So what I'm going to do is just kind of like read through the slides myself a little bit and then give you guys keys that things I've noticed out throughout my career that I've seen on the tests, okay? Because you guys can all study and read the same information, okay? It's not going to do you guys any good if I sit here and just read line by line, slide by slide, okay? So just bear with me, okay? Sweet. All right, sweet. So as you see it up there, this is the purpose of this, right? So it's for the sourcing and deployment of budget submitting office 18 personnel. So whenever you guys hear this information and you guys talk to like blue side commands and stuff, they'll be like, hey, BSO 18 personnel. So just know that BSO is budget submitting office, okay? Yeah, in support of contingency operations, full-scale war, or other national emergencies, okay? Okay, scope and applicability. All right, so you can just read that information real quick. Not really going to go over it. Aren't going to be questions. So. All right, so here's your topics, right? So you got terms, roles and responsibilities, readiness, manning, equipping, and funding. All right, terms. EMF, right? Expeditionary Medical Facility. All right, you'll hear that a lot. The TAH, right? Hospital ship. So when they start talking about that, like these are actually like really good terms to know because you will see this, especially like when you guys go up in rank and you guys start building annex queues. Like, so I know we're talking about your exam, but all this stuff is applicable later in your career, okay? Like CERTs, right? A casualty receiving and treatment ship. So when you start talking about casualties, and we start talking about evacs, you know what I mean, and all that stuff. So all of these terms are going to play a role within your career moving forward, not just the test. Okay, so everybody get a chance to read every bit of those. I'm not really going to sit there and just read them all to you. Okay. All right, roles and responsibilities. Okay. So there's some things in red there, right? So conducts assist visits every 2 years. I mean, that's probably some good information to know. So when tasked by BUMED task sourcing commands to provide qualified personnel within their NAVMED Echelon 3 activities, AOR, which is area of responsibilities, okay, and employs regional sourcing as a mitigating strategy to source shortfalls or substitutions as prescribed in this instruction. Assist sourcing commands with filling platform assignments and vacancies. So just think about it as filling billets, right? So, you know, if you want to be able to put it into a way that you can understand, just imagine like CMSID, right? We talk about billet-based distribution. It's kind of the same thing, only we're going to be talking about filling different types of vacancies, right? So when we're thinking about, hey, deployments, okay? Boom. So everybody in here, everybody's heard of like a POMI officer, right? POMI. Everybody's heard of that, right? Okay, so what things you need to look at here: appoints in writing a sourcing command, plans, operations, and medical intelligence. So that's, if you guys didn't understand what POMI means, that's what it means. Officer enlisted to execute the day-to-day responsibilities outlined in this instruction. All right, so when it comes to this instruction and BSO 18 personnel, just know that POMI, those are the people that are going to do those day-to-day operations. All right. Sourcing command POMI conducts the quarterly data analysis for personnel
deficiencies, deployment trends, and readiness of Navy medical forces obligated to platforms or operating forces, and impacts on sourcing command health operations as required. All right, so boom, there you go. You can read that. Assumes command, power, and responsibilities. Like you guys have this information. All right, all VSO 18 personnel. All right, so just this whole blurb. Okay, I'm going to read this to you. Responsible for maintaining their individual deployment readiness. Reports to the sourcing command POMI immediately upon identification of changes or events that affect their deployment readiness status within 48 hours of knowledge of changing condition. So when you guys are looking at that, like VSO 18 personnel, that's you. Okay? Alright, so that's like when you're at, like, for instance, like a hospital command and you guys are like checking into POMI. Is anybody ever familiar, like when you check into POMI there, you guys are filling out all of those, you know, that little worksheet saying what platform you're going to be under and everything? Is everybody tracking that? What I'm talking about here? Okay, because it's okay if you don't. You can raise your hand and we can go over it. So
Yeah, blue side only. So the hospital.
yeah,
This is for individual augmentation, which I asked them when I was in the other classroom and nobody had a clue. So
okay, yeah.
people might be lost.
Because when you guys are at a hospital command, you know how like deployments. You guys might necessarily see that, but like, so your chiefs will get messages like an email saying, hey, we have this platform available. We need 2 HNs or 2 HM3s to fill these billets for these deployments going for operating forces going forward. And then usually what happens is us as leadership, we're like, so we start identifying personnel who have the time, you know what I'm saying? They're within the window for the PRD. We start looking at EOS and all of those things, and then that's kind of how we select personnel. And your roles and responsibilities are kind of like when you guys check into the command, if there's any changes within like your status or anything, you guys are just making sure that you guys are going up to POMI and updating that information on that sheet that you guys all fill out. Probably you guys have only seen it whenever you check in. Okay, so everybody is tracking that, right? Okay. I just don't want to lose anybody here. Boom, readiness. All right. So, Expeditionary Medicine Platform Augmentation Readiness Training System. All right. Us as leadership, we call it MPARTS. Okay. This is just like the long form of it. So, whenever you guys hear like an acronym, when they start talking about MPARTS and who deals with MPARTS, obviously this is all gonna be like POMI, but Expeditionary Medicine Platform Augmentation Readiness Training System, MPARTS. Okay. All right, so BSO platforms and capabilities that shall be augmented according to the following. Okay, so this is kind of how they get those platforms, right? So then you got Marine Forces, which is kind of us, right? So like division, it could even be like Med Battalion or MLG. So casualty receiving and treatment ships, hospital ships. So you got the Mercy and the Comfort, EMF. FTP, MU, OCONUS, NTF, blood processing unit, precedents, okay, context. All right, 2 types of tasking. All right, 2 types of taskings are RFF and RFS, okay? So it originates from Naval Component Commander through the Joint Staff for Capabilities and Support of CCMD. Okay, the RFS is a Navy-to-Navy request from a Navy component for capabilities in support of Navy requirements. All right, so just the one that's not highlighted, kind of keep an eye on. These are usually short duration requests under 30 days in support of deployments for the RFS. Okay, that's what I would kind of highlight there on my own. All right, so equipping. All right, force health protection, okay? So just within 48 hours of knowledge of changing condition, okay? So Immediately upon identification of changes or events that affect their deployment readiness, so just know that 48 hours, okay? Platform augmentation, uniforms other than Navy working uniforms for the EMF and FTPMU will be funded by the sourcing command. You don't really need to know that. So, MAR4 individual. So just note here, you might, for Marine Corps Bulletin, right, the Big Bull 10120, Navy enlisted personnel serving with Marine Corps units are authorized special initial clothing allowances. Okay, that's actually good information for you guys to know whenever you go to, like, if you get on a platform with a Marine Corps unit, that you could get like a uniform allowance. So, especially for people like you've been away from the unit for us, I want to say more than 3 years. Okay. Navy officers may purchase and wear the utility uniform at their option and expense, which is highly recommended for unit cohesion and integrity. Alright, this is always going to be person, name, and service class responsible for the member. It's always the same. Just know that officers usually always have to purchase their own uniforms. So only enlisted usually get uniform allowance. So that's equipping. Alright, so funding. Alright. Let's see here. Let's see if we can talk about stuff that should be seen here. Alright, so what I would know here is sourcing command is responsible for funding of the following, right? So just kind of know like the first things here, travel expenses, right? So travel expenses for personnel sourcing command. So like try not to remember all of the sentences, but just know certain little terms within those, okay? Because nobody's ever going to remember every bit of this information. Alright. Sourcing command is not responsible for funding of the following. So, travel costs, okay? Personal PPE, personal protective equipment, individual protective equipment, firearms, ammunition, consumable medical supplies. Alright, so those are some of the things that I would know that the command is not responsible for as far as funding. Okay, sweet. Senior class, anybody got any questions? It's pretty straightforward, right? I mean, you guys have all the information. Hey, what's up?
So I recently heard that, I guess, like the BAS pharmacy, you're not allowed to supply medicine for them. I'm wondering if that's true because of like funding.
Where are you at?
MLG.
MLG?
Yeah.
So, just know this is for like VSO 18 personnel. Okay. So like as far as like day-to-day operations, as far as the BAS, like now we're gonna get into the weeds of like medical home port and things like that. Like it's not really gonna deal with augmentation as far as this goes. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. All
The BSs probably aren't allowed to issue meds anymore because they want everything done at the home port so that they can account for money spent. That's why home port exists. It's all being counted. Alright, so what was happening was we were seeing patients in the BAS and doing stuff in the BAS, and big Marine Corps wasn't able to account for the money that we actually spend in taking care of people. So someone was like, everybody's going to go through these clinics, and then everything's going to be logged because everything equates to a dollar sign. Tracking?
right. And then I can get with you offline and give you some other things.
Alright, hey, how's it going, guys? HM2 Arbalo, I work in the Career Counselor's Office for Second Market, Station 1 House Singer. It's fantastic. Hey, so we're going to go over the first 4 chapters of the Corpsman Manual. Everybody know the instruction number for the Corpsman Manual? What is it? 14295, right? What's the beginning portion now? Navigator. So don't let them mess you up on any of these questions, because they will try to trip you up on anything. Anything that they can throw in, like a ViewMat or an OpNav. If you just memorize the numbers, that doesn't guarantee that you're going to get the answer correct. So does anybody know what chapter 1 is of the Corpsman Manual? History. So if you've looked at the Corpsman Manual, you'll see that this, I think the section is about 9 pages long. Slide-wise, for PowerPoints, there's only about 3 PowerPoint slides on here. Mainly because when you think about history, especially you guys who have warfare qualifications, and you're going over those sections, it's straight memorization, right? So we're not going to throw a bunch of stuff up here that you guys are going to have to memorize anyway. But there are some key components for history that you should know. Like, does everybody know who Robert Stanley is? What do you say? First hospital corpsman to receive a Medal of Honor. So again, that's one of those key history things that you should know. What about how many Medal of Honors have been received? 22. 22, right? So another key thing. Let me come over here to skip these slides real quick. I can figure it out. And bear with me real quick, I'm trying to figure out these slides.
You need to click the right arrow earlier.
Right there? Oh, there we go. Let me try to go back. Alright, awesome. Alright, cool. We're back to it. So March 2nd, 1799, Congress mandated newly commissioned warship. So this is another question that try not to get confused. So when you hear cockpit, they're talking about the sick bay. All right, so don't be thinking it's involved with planes or anything like that when you're taking your test. Cockpit, sick bay. First, Loblolly Boy, right? Official rate in 1814. Okay. So what's the sick bay? Cockpit. What year for Loblolly Boy? 1814. 1814. Very good. All right. So waves. Another big one on the test. Does anybody know what waves is? Without reading. What's it stand for? It's up there. Go ahead and read it. All right. Say it one more time louder.
Women accepted for volunteer emergency services.
All right, awesome. So that was 12 January 1944. So volunteer emergency services, so waves, when you see that, 1944, 12 January, right? Okay, next one. Yeah, next one. So dental technician rating, you guys probably may not have been around when everything was separate, and there was a merger, right? So October 2005, dental technician rating was a separate entity, and then since 12 December 1947, and then it merged with the hospital core rate. So then they became just regular corpsmen. So it kind of sucked for them because they had to learn a bunch of corpsman stuff because they were really done with that. All right, so we talked about the Medal of Honor recipients already. 22, right? How many vessels? You can still see it. 14 vessels named for hospital corpsmen. So 14 vessels named for hospital corpsmen, 22 Medal of Honors, and then who was the first one to receive? Robert Stanley. All right. And then what does WAVE stand for? All right, that's right. All right, next one. I tell you, that might be it. There's only 3 slides on this one. But again, like I said, there's 9 pages in the actual Corpsman manual, so review those. They go over specific dates in history. like 9/11, right? So they'll ask you specifically about those operations. So make sure you're still reviewing that information for the test. Okay? All right. Who knows what Chapter 2 is? Chapter 2 of the Corporate Manual.
I did.
Nobody has any guesses? What'd you say? Oh, you're cheating. Say it out loud for everybody.
Expeditionary Medicine Administration.
All right, so Expeditionary Medicine Administration. So the first portion of this covers the manual of the medical department. Does anybody know what the manual of the medical department is? Yeah, what's up? Say it again. Say it. Right here, Patterson. You raise your hand. Yeah, it's the P117. All right, and then within the P117, there's a bunch of chapters that are listed in this chapter. It's a ton of them, right? So back to that memorization part. If you go to the next slide. Here they are, right? So medical department, medical corps, dental corps, hospital corps, examinations, health records. So these are all, if you look at like a lot of those DD pages, especially like Master Chief Breakers, this is what it's covering under the P117. But all these chapters fall under Chapter 2, Expeditionary Medicine Administration. So typically the ones that you see in the test is pharmacy, you'll see FMF, right, Chapter 19, medical examinations and health records. Those are probably the most popular ones. Don't forget these either, Chapters 22 and 23. There's so many different forms that can fall under this Chapter 23. Again, I would focus for these things on the ditties, because that's what's going to help you out the most, and using flashcards. A lot of memorization on these sections. All right, next. All right, SAMS. So SAMS is everybody familiar with MERS? Similar to MERS, right? So it's medical and dental tracking. The other capability that SAMS has is tracking supplies. So when you go over Chapter 5, probably later on in the course, you'll talk about supply, medical supply. And they'll talk about SAMS again because it also does that. So think about medical and dental and also supply portions, depending on what the question is asking you. So SAMS, it stands for Shipboard Non-Tactical Automatic Data Process, right? So that first portion is SNAP, so it's an acronym within an acronym. So pay attention to that for testing purposes, because they'll try to mess with you. And then the second portion is Automated Medical Systems. So that's all one thing, but there's an acronym within that acronym. So don't get confused, all right? so think about, so what's SNAP stand for? That one's easy. Right, and then the second portion of that is Automated Medical Systems. So it's all together as SAMS. All right, next. All right, so battalion aid stations. This has always been on the test. Like this has been on all my tests actually, even the first class tests that I've taken many times. So when you think about BASs, who's here from division? Anybody?
There's division people in here. Raise your hands. Come on.
Division guys.
You're proud.
Just
Camp
you.
Feds, your division.
What unit are you with?
Second LAR?
LAR. So how many corpsmen do you have in LAR?
There's some battalions, so we have like 20 some odd guys.
Yeah, so you definitely don't have 65, right? So whenever you're thinking about this, like in terms of like real life versus what's on paper, and it really just depends. With deployment, we did actually have 65 and 2 MOs, but try not to think about it in terms of, hey, this is what I work with on the day-to-day. Make sure you're going through this for 65 and 2 for medical officers, because that's what's the requirement for this battalion, for the average, right? All right. And everybody knows what BAS stands for. I don't want to skip over that. Battalion Aid Station. Yeah, everybody's good on that? All right, EMF. What's the EMF stand for? Expedition Medical Facility. Awesome. So they're going to ask you on the exam. A lot of times they're going to be asking you, hey, what is this? How many people are involved with it? Who's in charge of it? Those type of things. For this one, what you need to know is 500 beds, right? So the EMF is capable for 500 beds, organized, scale to fit the requirements identified by the COCOM. Again, an acronym that you may see in the test, COCOM, Command Commander. Okay? Fleet hospitals, on the other side, are designed to be used in operations greater than 60 days. So greater than 60 days, and then 500 beds for EMFs, all right? So these are things that are likely going to be asked on the exam. All right, next. All right, so what's EMF stand for again? And then how many beds for the EMF? 500. And then what about shit? What was the other one? Fleet hospitals. How many fleet hospitals? Up to 60 days. That's what they can provide support for. So I think this is the last slide on this section. But again, the actual chapter is longer, so make sure you're reviewing some of that information. So NMCBs, Naval Mobile Construction Battalions. There are, how many of them? There are 8. Who said that? 8? Very good. So there's 8 of them. So just know that they're home ported in Gulfport, Mississippi, and Port Hueneme. I think I said that right. All right, cool. Let me make sure we didn't miss anything for this section. I think that's about it. So what's the ratio for medical officers to, what'd you say? That's not 45. 55. Did you say 55? No, that's wrong again. 65. So you're having 65 corpsmen to 2 medical officers, right? 65 corpsmen to 2 medical officers. What's chapter 19 of the P117? FMAP, yeah. Yeah, I was paying attention. What about, let's see. And then what does NMCBS stand for? Naval Mobile Construction Battalion. And how many are there? 8. There's 8, and then you have them in where? Gulfport, Mississippi. Awesome. Yeah, that should about cover that. Again, don't forget that acronym on SAMS. There's 2 in there. So if you see a super long answer as that's likely it. Just pay attention to the wording on it. All right, chapter 3. Anybody know what chapter 3 is? Except for besides the guy with the book open right there.
Healthcare admin.
Healthcare admin. Awesome. So what do you think falls in healthcare admin? Yeah, it's not like exciting stuff, actually. You're right. I'm going to do the next slide. All right, so the biggest thing that I saw within these slides, you guys work with ALTA like every day, right? Do you know what ALTA actually stands for? Yeah, so somebody read that.
Armed Forces Health Longitudinal Technology Application.
Right, so that's ALTA. Again, they're going to try to ask you the very, very similar questions. So they'll say like Allied Forces Health Longitudinal. Don't pick that one. All right, so Armed Forces Health Longitudinal Technology Application. And again, they may ask you, hey, what do you document in ALTA? What do you document in MERS? And then what do you document in SAMS? So if it's a supply question, then obviously you're going to pick SAMS. So just pay attention to the difference between similar programs that are out there, especially these web-based programs like ALTA, MERS, SAMS. When you're talking about DEERs, another important thing for ID cards, right? So expired ID cards, you must get a new one within 120 days. In order to do that, you have to have signed this form for your family member. So it's the DD 1172. And you guys may have experienced this before, like if your spouse is getting a new ID card or your dependent needs an ID card, you have to sign that form in order for them to do it. Here's eligibility exceptions, SECNAV designees, and foreign military personnel. So those are the only exceptions for eligibility. Yeah, that should be that for that slide. All right, patient categories. You said there was a lot of boring stuff in here, and here it is. This is part of it, patient categories. So obviously, 1A, 1 Alpha, active duty, and then 1 Bravo, Reserve and National Guard. Those are probably going to be the easiest for you guys to remember. These other ones, again, 2 through 6, you're gonna have to memorize it. It's going to be either you can make an acronym with ASRC, ASRCA, however you want to do it, but you won't always get the easiest ones. They're not always going to ask you, hey, what's 1 Alpha? Because I know that your active duty is going to be the easiest thing. So make sure you take a look at those guys for patient priority categories. All right, next. All right, cool. Bill of Rights and then responsibilities. You guys that work at the hospital, you probably pay attention to these a little bit more than our Greenside folks, because that's how it goes. But the way to break down these two for kind of differentiating them, remember that all this stuff over here for the rights, this is like from the hospital. Like the hospital is responsible to provide this for the patient. And then over here, you're looking at, this is what the patient is responsible for, really to the healthcare provider and for their own health. Right, so providing information, pain management, respect and consideration, compliance with medical care. So when you see patient bill of rights and they're asking about specific responsibilities, that's typically the patient. And then when they're asking about the rights, usually the hospital is providing those rights to the patient. Yeah, I would just take maybe a couple of those, try to store them in your head, just so you can kind of pick them out from a multiple choice. All right, next. All right, so you guys know that there's instructions within instructions always. So when you're looking at Chapter 3, you're also going to find the DAPA instruction, which is 5350.4. Okay. So still know that that is the DAPA instruction. Don't dive too far into it because it's probably overlapped in some of your other bibs. So you see it again anyway. Same thing for family advocacy. UMED instruction 6320.70 and SECNAV instruction 1752.3. So those are the guiding instructions for family advocacy. So don't skim over these smaller instructions that fall within it because they're still testable. It's still testable material. Yeah, I guess you can know the staff members composed of medical line chaplain and family service center personnel support family advocacy. Something to know. They may or may not ask it. They will ask though, what does DAPA stand for? And if you don't already know without looking at this slide, you should probably toss that on a flashcard. Otherwise, they're going to try to trip you up again. Drug and Alcohol Program Advisor. Okay. All right, next. All right, physical readiness. Here's another instruction that pops in there under Chapter 3, but it's OPNAV instruction 6110.1 series. Just talk about your physical readiness program. So semi-annual. You guys know about physical readiness. A couple different acts, right? So you have the Freedom of Information Act. Within the Freedom of Information Act, the key takeaway is you have 10 days to respond to a request for the Freedom of Information Act. Not to be confused, right, with Privacy Act, which Privacy Act, thing you need to know about that is when it was enacted. What's up?
In the quiz it says 20 days.
In the quiz? All right, we'll have to get that correct. I'm gonna write that down. 20 days in the quiz. Cool. Yeah, we'll look at it. Yeah, so if you guys are seeing anything like that, this has been hand jammed like from everything. Like the quizzes were typed in, so there's always room for error, especially if we're making like multiple answers, right? So we're making up answers too to go along with these. So you're going to click the wrong one at any time, and sometimes the formulas will do that. So if you see anything that looks questionable, bring it up to one of the instructors so we can make sure that the correct information. So you're not studying like, oh shit, like it's 20 versus 10, right? So it is 10. You have 10 working days to respond to the request. Privacy Act, 1974, and then there's one more on the next slide. There you go. Oh, maybe it's later. That's fine. Because you have the Privacy Act, the Freedom of Information Act, and there's another that it might be on a different chapter. That's fine. Right. So prisoner patients. When you're thinking about prisoner patients, there's really three categories. You have your military prisoners, your non-military federal prisoners, and then you have your enemy prisoners of war and detained personnel. The only thing that I pulled from here that I was like, oh, okay, this is a good way to differentiate it is the only ones that don't get medical care unless it's an emergency are non-military federal prisoners, right? So they're only authorized emergency medical care. You have your military prisoners down here who are already authorized benefits, so you know they're getting medical care. And then you have enemy prisoners of war who are authorized medical and dental care. So the only ones that are not in that category are your non-military federal prisoners. So really that's the only thing that I saw different between the three. So just know the three categories and the fact that These guys don't get medical care unless it's an absolute emergency. Right? Is that it?
I think that's it.
All right, well, let's go over some stuff. All right, so you know that form, like when your spouse needs to get a new ID card? What do you need? What'd you say? 1172, so 1172. And then how long do they have to get it once it's expired? 120 days to get it. So when you're thinking about the Freedom of Information Act, how many days do they have to respond to the request? Full 10 days. What about the Privacy Act? When was it enacted? 1974. Let's see here. Prisoners of war, so enemy prisoners of war, what's the difference between stuff received for enemy prisoners of war and military prisoners?
I think one is break, the other is like the actual enemy that we.
Well, not the difference between the two,
Oh.
but what's the difference between the care that they receive? You know that?
So I think for ECOW, we have to abide by the Geneva Convention, and that's one of their rights.
So for enemy,
I was gonna stop talking.
no, you're good, you're good. So remember, so you have your enemy prisoners of war, which are able to receive medical care. So you're right, you abide by the Geneva Convention, and that's why. You have, what was the second category?
Federal, non-military.
Non-military federal prisoners, which receive
Are only entitled to
emergency medical care. So, and then lastly, you have your military prisoners, which care do they get? They get regular medical care. And in the instruction it says most of the time, so there is a little gray area, but know that they get full medical care. Okay. Don't let it confuse you. All right, chapter 4. Anybody know chapter 4? This is like your bread and butter, chapter 4. What's chapter 4, Bookman? You don't have chapter 4 in there?
records.
Yeah, medical records. Alright, we gotta do next.
We got this.
Alright, so medical records. So you have which types of medical records? Remember, these are broken down into like larger categories, and then they get smaller and smaller. So don't get confused. Don't confuse your categories there. So within primary, you have 3 types. So your health records, outpatient records, and your inpatient records. Within secondary are typically like OBGYN or psychiatry type. There's other examples. Yes, like special circumstances is a good one. So those are your secondary medical records. And then temporary, also known as ancillary records. So when you're breaking them down, like if they ask you a question, hey, give me an example of a secondary medical record. Don't give them an example of an outpatient record or an inpatient record. Stick to these categories that you know are correct. OBGYN, family advocacy, psychiatry, psychology, and you'll be clear for that. All right, next. All right, so again, CO has ultimate responsibility of medical records. Don't get wrapped up in that though, because that's not always the case. A lot of times for different programs, it's PMed has overall management, but in this case, it is true. The CO does have ultimate responsibility over that. Big thing on this slide is Naval Reserve Personnel Center. So in New Orleans, that's the custodian for inactive reserve personnel. So when you look at these dates, pay attention. So 31 January 1994, if you were discharged before then, your stuff goes to the National Personnel Records Center, right? If you were discharged after then, so after 31 January 1994, it goes to the Department of Veterans Affairs. And I think I've had that question a few times. I don't know if it was the second class test or the first class test. But again, these same questions get recycled because the form manual is on every single bit. So use the question again. So before 31 January 1994, it's NPRC, and then afterwards, it's the VA. Right? So you only have to memorize the one date. It's just a before and an after. So before NPRC, after VA. All right, next. All right, these are the fun ones. Again, there's acronyms for these. The way I remember it is kind of funny. Obviously, active duty, you guys know your FMP for active duty is 20. So when you think about your wives or your husbands or your what have yous, 30 to 39, you're allowed to have how many spouses are you allowed to have? No, you're allowed to have 10 because 0 counts. So you're allowed to have 10 spouses. Don't ever get up to 10 spouses, but you're allowed to. And you could go further, but this is just an example. For kids, how many kids are you allowed to have? 19. All right, you can have 19 kids. That's a lot of kids. And then from there, you go from 40 through 60, and it goes by 5. So if you look at it, right? So there's 40, 45, 50, 55, 60. And the first one is your mother, because your mother comes first, right? So 40 through 44 is your mother, and then you go to your father. 45 through 49, your father. Yeah, you got a question?
So 12 active reserve, would that belong to the child thing, or what would that be?
What do you mean?
It says 12 would be for active reserve.
Yeah.
12 would also be in between the
You're the 12th kid.
No, so. Oh, I see what you're saying.
If there's, you have 12 dependent kids, would that person
Also be a 12. It would have to show as a 12, yeah.
And a child.
Yeah, the only difference is that social that's connected will be the primary sponsor social versus the other social will be your it'd be primary social, like, hey, that's my social, versus the kid social, it's the father or mother social. All right, so remember, mother, father is first. Following that, you have in-laws, which again it starts with mother, so mother-in-law first, and then father-in-law second. And they're all going by 5s. And then when you get to 60, it's all other authorized dependents up to 69. And then these two you're just gonna have to memorize on their own. 99 is all others, and then 98 is civilian employees. So if you had an FMP of 47, what would that be? Your father's. Yeah. Likewise, if you had between 55 and 59, that would be your father-in-law. Did you say father-in-law first?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not father-in-law for this. For 47, it'd be dependent father or stepfather. Father-in-law is 55 to 59. So remember, the first two are your mothers and fathers, and then the second two are your in-laws, starting with mother and father. So it still starts in the same order. So however you guys want to memorize it, but usually you'll find patterns and things, and it's the easiest way to break it down. Really, that's it for that portion. That's not the last slide, is it?
Oh, no.
Okay, cool. Alright, so preparing medical records. You guys have all looked at a medical record, so you know the sections of medical record. You guys do medical record verification. I'm sure every single one of you has done it at least one time, right? Probably 1,000 times. So obviously, when you're looking at your medical record, what is part 1? It's pencil entries. So done in pencil, arrival date with your UIC, all that stuff on that left side of that record jacket that you're used to seeing. This is what I was talking about though. Your Privacy Act, the signature one. So when you're doing your signature, it's DD2005. And then the other portion with the Privacy Act, what do you have to remember? When it was enacted, right? And when was it enacted? 1974. So there's that's what I was saying, there's 3 parts to it. So 1974 was enacted. The form you're actually signing is the DD2005. And then what was Freedom of Information Act? Well, why is that important? Right, you have to respond to requests within 10 working days. That's correct. All right, part 3, disclosure and accounting of the record. I think that covers that portion. I think. You on the next slide? Yeah, so you move over to the actual colors of the record. So you guys all know the colors of the records, and I trust that you do because, again, you do this every day. So we won't have to go over that acronym. But now I would challenge you to not only know the colors, but again, these guys go in order. It's the same record form. So 6150, if any of you has ever been in supply within your BAS or within your section dealing with medical records, it's 6150 / the number, right? So 6150 / 20, and then it goes through 29. So if they ask you specifically, hey, what's the form for the red record jacket, right? And you're like, oh, it's 6150 / 29. Now, so not only should you know the colors, but correspond the form number with it. as well. It'll help you out. There may be 1 or 2 questions on there that try to do it backwards, since everybody has a pretty good grasp on the colors, I think. Again, so it uses terminal digit filing system. They may ask specifics on this. So second to last digit of the SSN, and then the last digit, and then the 6th and 7th digit with the corresponding digits. So if you look in the actual instruction, it'll break down the terminal digit filing system a little bit more. Or they may just ask you a question on what is the terminal digit filing system, and it's just how you file records. So these are answers that you guys know, but you just don't think about how they're going to ask the question. So, TD, and sometimes they'll write it in the acronym form. So TDFS. You see TDFS? Don't get scared. It's just the way you file your records. It's the stuff you guys do every day. All right, next. All right, I'm not going to go through all this stuff. When I was telling you the ditties and all the form numbers, this section has just about every form that you could possibly think of on here. From lab forms to your autopsy forms to your record jacket forms to any form you can think of is on here. So again, this is going to be you going through, doing your flashcards, taking quizzes, and trying to memorize some of these key ones. You guys already know. Just stay away from the ones you already know. If you already know them, cool. You're going to know them on the test. Pick the ones that you don't know. Like everybody knows reference audiogram, right? What's reference audiogram? So try 215. You know asbestos because that's part of your record verification test. So pick some stuff that you don't know. Like what is the, what's the 877? Do you guys know what that one is? This guy knows it. Okay, so that guy knows it. Go through them now. Go through them. That's the only way you're going to memorize it. And I think that's the last slide. Oh wait, there's any dental text? Dental text back there? So I don't, I'm not a dental tech, so I never worked with dental records, but I've seen my dental record. And I know that when I open the dental record, on the left-hand side, I do have my, my bite wings and stuff, and my radiographs are in there. So think about that when you're taking your test and they're asking about dental records specifically. Like you guys have seen the dental record, so just think about it, like open it in your head, like, oh, on the left side, I know this is there. Part 2, you have your health questionnaire, so that's that thing you have to fill out before you do your exam. And then part 3, this is really the stuff that you guys don't really deal with because the dental techs do it. So Easy 603 documentation, Easy 603 alpha for treatment reports. And then again, there's a list of forms that fall under that previous slide. When you're thinking about record jackets, just try to picture it in your head when you're opening it, and go through your medical record. Go through your medical record and your dental record. It'll just get you more familiar with the questions that they're going to ask you on the test. All right, next. All right, that's it. Let's go over some questions real quick. 3 types of records. All right. So if I was discharged before 31 January of 1994, where would my records go? Correct. Say again? Right. And then if I was discharged after that, I'm going to the For FMPs, what are the ranges for children? If I had children.
0030 at
Was it? Right. What about my father? My father or stepfather? Yeah. All right, cool. So you guys get the breakdown of those guys. I think those are really the key things. We'll go over the Freedom of Information Act one more time. How many days? 10 days for the request. And then what's the form that you signed for the Privacy Act? Yeah, say it again loud.
DD2005.
Yep, DD 2005. And then when was that enacted? 1974. Awesome. Yeah, you guys are going to do fantastic. That's it, but just remember, when you're going through these PowerPoints, that's not all the information that's out there. You still have the book to reference, so go through the book, see what highlights you pick out, and review those too as you're taking these tests. All right? Any questions? What's up?
Where would the president fall under the FFG?
The president? I don't know, actually. It's a good question. I have no idea.
Thanks, Tippy.
I'm gonna look it up now. I gotta look it up, and I'll find out what the president's FMP is.
They draw
This quiz right here that you pointed out, I'll fix that. Alright, so it is 10 days. On the quiz, it's going to tell you 20. I'll fix it though. Go ahead and take a real quick. Do you know how many corpsmen are actually medal recipient honored? Wrong. According to the book, it's actually 23 now though, because the SEAL, I think it was like 2 years ago.
16.
Yeah, you guys know what I'm talking about. He got a Medal of Honor, makes it 23. There's actually 15 ships named after corpsmen, not 14. So
Don't get confused. Go off your book for the test.
go off of this, but I'm just saying
In real life.
for history stuff. Additionally, I don't know if you guys, if you're looking for collateral duties in your work center, how many people have morning muster? You have morning muster, right? One easy way for you to stand out is to ask your LPO if you could just present a snippet on history every morning. Alright? That pays dividends to both you, because it gives you an opportunity to lead as an HN, but it also pays dividends to your fellow shipmates. Alright? You can go to the Naval History page on Facebook. They share stuff every day, and pretty much every day has something we can relate to. Okay? All you have to do is stand up there, present something. Another good thing is to start a Medal of Honor recipient program at your command, where you assign sailors a Medal of Honor recipient. They put together a presentation, and then maybe once a month, every 2 weeks, you guys get together and they present that, right? It gives them some ownership and take pride in our corps, okay? Because it's huge. I can't convey it enough, like, you guys are a part of something so much bigger than you really truly understand. I know I didn't understand it at this pay grade until I got further down the road, but you guys are a part of something that's really great. There's no other corps in all the military that has as much decorations, honor, ability to go out and do things and step up when it's time for us to be called on, both in the civilian sector or in the military, right? Wartime, whatever it is. We are something great, and I want you guys to take pride in that, and this is an opportunity for you to do so, but also learn history and, you know, bring it back to your shipmates. So if that's something you're interested in, I challenge you to do that at your commands. Good to go? All right, take a quick 5-minute break so HQ Tyson and I can get him squared away, and then we'll come back.
How many
I'm done. Oh yeah, yeah, no problem.
Change it there. Change it up there. Change on here. Whatever one, because I can't.
Alright, give HM2 your attention, or be working the quizzes on your computer.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm HM2 Tyson. I work over at Division Combat Skills Academy. I'm a combat trauma instructor. So prevention or preventative medicine and infection control isn't really my forte, but let's get through it. So the way I want to do this, I really don't have enough time to actually teach you guys slide by slide. So I'm just going to go over a few things that I've seen on previous exams. And then if you guys see anything, just go ahead and raise your hand and share it with the class. That sound good? Alright, so the first thing we have is the terms. Alright, sanitation. There's always questions about sanitation and foodborne illnesses. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, what's the class name on it?
So you would go to the Coleman Manual.
Okay, what chapter?
Chapter 9.
Chapter 9, thanks, sorry.
Does anybody need a little time to? All right, cool. So I would know sanitation, right? And also foodborne illnesses. And you go ahead and read those terms to yourself. Does anybody see anything that they remember on a previous exam on this first slide?
Yeah, we skipped 5 through 8. Sorry, I forgot to tell you guys. We'll come back to that. So this is going to be chapters 9 and 10.
Alright, so terms continue.
I'm pretty sure I've seen this second bullet. It says, who performs sanitation inspections and provides recommendations to the CO, and then it had like HM, and then it had medical department rep as a second one, and then they were two combined.
Okay, that's, yeah. The second bullet, the HM as the MDR, the medical. Everyone hear that one? That second bullet. What you guys think about preventative medicine right now from E5 and below? That's basically what we're doing. You know, working with DAS, clinics, departments, or wherever. This is a lot of the stuff that you guys are doing. So infectious agents also. Go ahead and read that term to yourself. So a huge one, asepsis and asepsis technique. I've seen those on every exam, E5, E4, all of them, all right? So learn that.
Bowie-Dick type test.
Oh, also Bowie-Dick type test.
Yeah, I've seen that back when I was going up for you guys.
So this is pretty much stuff you guys already know or contaminated. You know, we need to work your brains out trying to remember that definition. Culture, that's one definition I would try to remember. for the rest of those, I haven't really seen those. Has anyone else seen semi-critical items, non-critical items? You seen something? Which one?
Previous PowerPoint.
On the previous PowerPoint, okay. So disinfected, there's always a question that it has the actual definition, right? So let's say something like to cleanse something, so as to destroy, to prevent the growth of disease-carrying microorganisms, and they'll have disinfected, asepsis, asepsis technique, stuff like that. So remember, when it has to do with cleaning, especially cleaning stuff, because who's the main people cleaning? All the medical equipment that we're using.
So it be disinfected or like sterilization?
Yeah, disinfected sterilization.
They'll have like those. Every time.
Every time. Again, infectious agents.
Nosocomial infection, know that one.
And then PPE. You guys, everybody should know what PPE is, but they're always going to ask you about PPE. Every time, PPE. And it might be a scenario-based question. All right, so like, what would you bring to this procedure? All right, so study your PPE. Sterile field, huge. Any surge techs in here? Any surge techs? Couple you guys know the sterile fields. But you start reaching over something, the doc's probably gonna get mad at you, right? So learn about those sterile fields, sterile and sterility. So learn all the definitions that have to do with sterile, as you see on this slide. They're pretty much the same. But again, they're gonna ask you, they're gonna probably give you that definition and then have sterilization, disinfectant. So just know the difference between those, right? And the spray wipe spray. Did you have a question? No, I see you raising your hand. All right. So spray wipe spray. Know that method. Again, as you guys can see, they're always talking about sterilization, sterilizers, and stuff like that. So you know that's going to be pretty heavy on that. Does anybody see anything on here that they've seen on previous exams?
I don't see anything which here, but I did the cleaning. Or at least they were on the left.
Right, so those methods of cleaning.
And times.
The times?
Yeah.
All right, so for the classification of microorganisms, just know the difference between bacteria and viruses. There's a chance that they might ask you something along those lines. And fungi. So, go ahead. Again, just know the difference between standard precautions and universal precautions. Not really much I can teach you there. And then hand washing. You're already going to ask you something about hand washing. You don't know how to wash your hands, or you can't actually think through the question.
Have that, but they have like how long you're supposed to wash your hands.
Yeah.
You guys good on hand washing and PPE? Pretty basic stuff. Again, as you can see, PPE continue. They're probably going to ask you a lot of questions about PPE. so transmission-based precautions. In the hospitals, a lot of these exams go off of working in the hospital. To know the difference between your airborne precautions, your droplet precautions, and contact precautions. Right? So know how far you're supposed to stand away from somebody. If it's an airborne precaution. Contact, you must have gloves on. So know the differences between those different precautions. Immunization and testing. All active duty healthcare or personnel will be tested for HIV every 2 years. So just remember, HIV will be tested every 2 years. And tuberculosis, TB testing, and screenings on an annual basis. So 2 years for HIV and TB annually. Right? So again, we have some terms. Has anyone seen any of these terms on the exam? I'm sorry for the people not in this class. Go ahead.
I've seen portal of exit, closed.
So portal of exit, portals of entry.
See, reservoir and medical asepsis.
So medical sepsis and reservoir. Reservoir. Right. So we just heard medical abscesses. Abscesses. I can't even say it. Messed that up. Reservoir, portal of exit, and portal of entry. Those are 4 terms that most people said they've seen on the exam. Go ahead.
I remember H2 for the mode of transmission, it broke down into like, I forgot the terms, I haven't studied in a while, but it was like whether something was on a counter, something was on somebody's hand, or, it broke more in depth.
I think the slides actually go into that too. Like right here.
Potable water was one. I don't think it was the same thing as on there right now, but potable water was good.
I really haven't seen much of this on the exam. The banking solution, I think that's one of them. All right, so just to know if there was an exposure, what you would do to deal with that. So for instance, this talks about something got in your eye, flush eye with cool water for 15 minutes. That's all something that may happen with the job that you guys do. Needle sticks, the needle stick procedures, what you do after a needle stick. So this is huge, man. Management of infectious waste. There have been times I've had 5 questions in a row on just infectious waste. I know some of you guys can agree on that. So honestly, when it comes to clinical medicine, infectious waste, that's probably the one section that they're going to ask you a lot of questions about. Because you're the ones that are constantly, tying that gooseneck, taking those bags out, right? They want to know that you guys actually know what you're doing, handling that infectious waste. So I would double down on infectious waste, try to learn as much about it as I can, and it'll benefit you for this exam.
It's almost no difference. Like, there's no difference between infectious waste and regulated medical.
So this slide right here, I would study this one. If you don't want to read the entire section, this slide right here. Again, cleaning ministerial.
Use of mops in operating room. That was in the.
Go ahead and say it one more time, louder.
Mops in the operating room. That was literally the exam before the last one. That was
So you guys didn't hear, we had a sailor say that on the last exam, the use of mops in the operating room is the least desirable method of cleaning. It was on the last exam. Alright, these exams don't change that much. Again, you see search for a septic technique. Learn everything about septic. And then you guys can use these slides for gowning and gloving when you're talking about sterile field, sterile gloves, sterile gowns. That's just good to know. So they might actually ask you like what comes next after donning the gloves or whatever. Any questions? All right. All right, so again, there's not enough time to actually teach slide by slide. So we're just going to try to hit that pertinent information, things you guys have seen on the exam, or that I have seen. And this is for disinfection and sterilization. So continuation of what we were just talking about. Again, disinfection. I'm telling you guys, learn the difference between the cleaning techniques. Does anybody have anything on disinfection? So for disinfection, I will learn what it kills and what it doesn't kill. They may ask you if disinfecting this area, what will survive, what won't survive, right? Again, there's levels of disinfection. It's that little, I can't think, little binder you have with all your chemicals and stuff.
SDS, yeah.
What's it called?
SDS.
SDS?
Safety data sheet.
Safety data sheet. Study those. Know what you have. Because there's some wipes, or the sandy wipes, that kill certain. Yeah. So know the type of chemicals and stuff that you're using too. And the levels of disinfectant. So I know this is really hard to see. You can tell. So this basically is just saying the level of bacterial activity in high, medium, intermittent, or low. Disinfectant would kill it or wouldn't. So learn those different types of bacteria and the means to actually kill that bacteria. Right? anyone ever seen this? Practice influencing germicidal procedures. So the four most commonly used are these four. If you don't see these four on the exam, ask you a question about it. So again, I would look at these four right here and determine what level they are. All right. So they might ask you a high level disinfectant is what. So learn the levels of these commonly used agents, these chemical agents. And those slides are just, they were just going more in depth on those chemicals. We don't have time to actually get into that. Go ahead.
It'll ask tips for like different forms of it. I don't know, I don't remember specifically, but I do know the last one.
So again, for those chemical types, just know what they're used for and the level of disinfectant it is. All right, what they're used for and the level. You need to break down like chemistry and freaking know what it derives from or stuff like that. Just know what it's used for and what level it is. So this is going into the semi-critical equipment for disinfection. I haven't really seen any of this on the exam. Anybody else? So sterilization, the highest level of contamination, control, and sterilization because it results in the total destruction of all forms of microbial life. I guarantee you there's going to be some type of question on there that has that written, just like in the last one, definition with sterilization as one of the answers. So then know the process or different processes for sterilization. Ultrasonic cleaning, for instance. Just know like what it does. This is a pretty good slide, manual scrubbing, time consuming. So they might ask you like, what's negative when it comes to manual scrubbing or something like that. It's time consuming, which is a higher risk of contamination.
Did I say art readily available instead of art readily available? Maybe I mean
Don't worry about that. Alright, so pre-sterilization.
Like 3 times though.
Anybody working like a surgical or DSS or surgical services, wards, stuff like that, probably help you on this stuff.
It's like a blue thing.
Yeah. Yep, that's exactly what it is. So I would learn this. Learn what atomic rapid material paper plastic or nylon. And then this is always on there right here. So paper plastic pill packs after a pack has been sterilized and heat sealed, overwrapped, it will extend a 30-day shelf life to 180 days. So learn those shelf lives of when they're packaging those sterilized equipment. And then again, there might be you might see something like this. Where they're asking what's on the sealed pack or what must be labeled on that sealed pack. So just remember that it's the ID number of the sterilizer, prepares initials and dates, the dates of the sterilization and when it expires, right? So they might ask you what's on there or would you accept this if this wasn't on there. So again, this is a good slide to just study right here. A little chart to give you the wrapping method and then how long that shelf life is. There's probably going to be a question when it comes to sterilization and those wrapping methods and how long you actually have before it expires. So I would go back in the PowerPoints if you guys don't want to just read all the words, just look at those charts. Those charts. More than likely there'll be a question. Again, this is just basic definition of sterilization techniques. So learn these temperatures as well. Alright, so for steam under pressure, sterilization begins when the autoclave reaches 245 degrees Fahrenheit. There's always a question on this. Always. Before you did test, learn what it's testing for. Alright. And then dry heat sterilization. So they're going to ask you probably for dry heat sterilization. I've probably seen that more than any of them besides the Boeing dip test. It's always how long. So know how long in the actual temperature. So 320 to 345 degrees Fahrenheit for 90 plus minutes. Right? Or 90 minutes plus preheat. So as it's heating up to that 320 to 345. Learn this whole slide right here. Right. And this is another good slide to study. Here gives you degrees and time. So chemical vapor. Usually the biggest questions I see on sterilization has to do with the temperature of those autoclaves, steam, stuff like that. I really haven't seen anything about the chemical vapors, other gas. But again, if you see something that's talking about chemical vapors, just remember 20 to 40 minutes at 207 degrees Fahrenheit with 20 psi. Or there might be a question like, what's the disadvantage to chemical vapor sterilization? And requirement is that there's adequate ventilation due to chemical vapors. So there needs to be some type of ventilation. I've never seen this. Sterilization using plasma state hydrogen peroxide. Anybody else? I'll tell you guys, learn the temperatures and the times. So again, I would just go in and look at these slides, and I would get what type of sterilization it is, and I would get the time and temperature. Time and temperature. And maybe a few little or it has a disadvantage. I wouldn't really get into like the entire definition of what it is. Time and temperature. So know these three commonly used sterilization monitors, so the internal indicators, external indicators. These monitors are just to make sure that sterilization has occurred. Alright, so they might ask you, how do you know that this item is sterile? Alright, and then you go into your biological monitors.
Like baking sauce with the line, like going across it, like the black line, that's the
That is it. Any questions? Again, sorry, we couldn't just sit here and talk about each slide. There's not enough time. Good luck in the advancement exam. It does seem like EAP has gone a long way. Give you guys actually some computer-based stuff that you can actually take home and study yourself. That's where most of the learning is going to come from. All right, so if you guys would just noted like some of the key points to look at. Just remember those charts. Always remember the charts, the temperatures and time for those sterilization methods as well. That's all I have. Thank you.
Hey, if you go to the classroom real quick, Chief posted something in there. I'll pull it up on the big screen. Let me just get it over here. Yeah, it's the flashcard little thing, which we're going to try to generate. But he just wants you guys to test it out. You could probably create your own flashcards in there too if you wanted to. Alright. Come through the front, dude. Now we don't have to trudge into that.
Hey, Russ, good luck.
Alright, so of course you got the little flashcard thing here. We've only loaded it with questions from chapter 1, it looks like. But if you go here to more, well, so you got your practice right here where you can type in the answer, I'm guessing. You got your list of questions right here. That's how you learn best. You got a matching one. You got the word cloud where it just blasts at you so you see it over and over again. And you got this more option over here. So you can create bingo from these. You can create a crossword from these, however you learn. A hangman, memory game. And then you also have this option right here where you can generate a printable quiz, which is pretty cool. Alright, so it's just different options. Get in there and mess with it. If you create your own quizzes, feel free to share them with the class in there so everyone can learn from it. And then let us know how it works. Damn, dude. Alright, so we'll roll through PowerPoints for NavEntra 5 and 6 right now until about 11:30, and then I'll break you guys for lunch. Alright, so of course the more we do now and we get done, and I don't have to add to the back end on Thursday, the faster we can get out of here. So go ahead and pull up chapter 5. If you need to use the head, run over and use the head real quick. But I'm just going to start rolling. I understand the Corpsman manual is boring, but there's a good number of questions they can ask for you guys. Alright, chapter 5. Medical logistics, a big one. So you medlog guys, you probably know all this. So if something's wrong, let me know. Alright, so 1850, United States Navy established Naval Medical Supply Depot in Brooklyn, New York. 1853, Congress authorized a separate manufacturing and laboratory that enabled to produce medical supplies for the medical department of the Navy. 52, Brooklyn was transferred to the Bureau of Supplies and Accounts, and then it became DLA, NAVSUP, and NavMedLogCom. So DLA is the overall, Defense Logistics Agency. NAVSUP falls under them, and then NavMedLogCom falls under NAVSUP. Good to go? So we know what logistics is. Chief of BUMED established standard organizational structure for medical logistics department and all naval medical and dental activities with logistics responsibilities. So BUMED is in charge of establishing the organization for medical and dental activities logistics. DLA maintains centralized inventory. They have a technical review, which they screen all requisitions to verify that items are available from mandatory government source. Purchasing, commercial procurement actions take place. Staff reviews purchase requests and determines the type and method of procurement. Warehouse, storeroom, receipt control, all things in place to make sure that we're using the proper channels so that we're not doing wasted spending or misappropriation. Stock control, responsible for the inventory management aspect of the material held in the warehouse. Equipment management, administrative commands properly utilization and disposal program. Biomed, any biomed techs in here? Nope. Essential supply, plans and directs operation necessary to order and receive material for working stock. It's good to understand these terms and what each one does. Alright, so NAVSUP P485 is your naval supply systems manual. If they ask you what manual is in charge of ordering naval supplies, it'll be what? 485. It's 3 volumes. Volume 1 is a float, Volume 2 is supply appendices, and Volume 3 is a short. Kind of in the order of what we worry about most, okay? So we're worried about afloat forces or at sea forces because they're the ones actually executing operations. And then supply appendixes is kind of what we look at, how we use, the supply afloat, and then a short is what we worry about with these, right? And then we already covered what 485 is. 409 Millstrap Manual publishes a handy reference for personnel responsible for originating and processing millstrap documents. I'm not sure what millstrap or millstrap documents are. Does anybody in here know? Okay, good. I would just know that 485 is the overall and 409, is an additive. 5132 is the Bureau of Medicine and Surgery Equipment Management Manual. Talks about how to fund, budget, acquire, use, maintain, repair, redistribute, and dispose equipment under BUMED. Some terminology. Have you seen anything like this on previous quizzes or previous tests? Yes? Okay. So I would take a look at these. What one?
Unauthorized and unauthorized commitment.
Unauthorized commitment. Alright, so when government representative lacking the authority to enter into a contract on behalf of the government. So that'd be like your LS going out and entering some, contract to clean or, have your oxygen bottles refilled without proper, usually that falls on a supply officer or something. Okay? Some more terminology. Micro purchase, less than $3,000. Might want to know that. Priority designator, 2-digit number used by the customer to determine the urgency of the requisite item. Might want to know that. We all know what ServMart is, I hope. It's like the first source, try to get it from ServMart before going out to contract purchasing. Bulk stock, know that one. Material in full, unbroken containers available for future use. Know what a consumable is. Know what a non-consumable is. Know what a standard stock and national item identification number is.
That's on there.
Yeah, that NID is big. I think we talk about that later on here. Operating budget is the annual budget of the activity. Funds are distributed as operating targets or OPTARs. Unused quarterly funds may be carried over to the next quarter. FSC is made up of 2-digit number codes, federal supply group, and a federal supply class. Know these right here. 6500 is medical, dental, and veterinary. 6505 is drugs and biologicals. 6508, medicated cosmetics, toiletries, etc., etc. Alright, know those. Take a look at these in depth. You guys are going to want to know those. Alright, here's the NIN, or NSN. 13-digit stock number, know that. 4-digit federal supply classification, and 9-digit national item identification number. Know the breakdown. I'm gonna have to sit down, I'm not lying. I feel fucking really weird right now. Okay, so I'm glad I'm in a room full of corpsmen, but I'm gonna sit down. Don't judge me. I don't know. I think I might be dehydrated. I was sick over the weekend. Alright, so.
Did you change your song?
I did. I did not take Motrin. There's your problem. Yep. Numerical terms, month of usage. Understand what operating level is, your safety level, stockage objective, requisitioning objective. There's SAMs again. We talked about that. It can be used to track your inventory of medical supplies. It's a great program.
DD form 1149.
All right, good. 1149. Know that one. That's your requisition and invoice shipping document. 1155. Know your controlled substance inventory is conducted monthly.
Bulkhead to bulkhead building.
Yep, bulkhead to bulkhead annually. Take a look at all those. Aisles should be wide enough, 1.5 times the width of the largest cart.
Oh, yeah.
Boxes must be stored 18 inches below the sprinkler heads. Do we understand why that is? Yeah, because the sprinkler is less effective, things are closer to it, so it won't be able to cover. Sprinklers are put in specific areas so that it covers the whole room.
It's actually kind of fire hydrant.
Yep.
But that's on the
Suspended or J stock is used to store material unsuitable for issue. Understand what demos is. Know the breakdowns here. So minor personal property has an acquisition cost greater than 5,000 but less than 250. Sub-minor personal property is an asset, has an acquisition cost of 5,000 or less. We know what HIPAA is. So you have 10 days to report type 1 complaints. Or type 1 is reported immediately. 2 and 3 are reported within 10 days from date of the incident. The 3 maintenance levels are as follow. Alright? Never seen anything like that, but you never know.
It didn't show it on there, but spot check's on there too, like as a term, or something like that. I asked you like when you're supposed to do a spot check or something, spot inspection or something like that.
Okay.
That was definitely on the list.
Alright.
Yeah, there it is. Okay. Spot inventory.
Know these different forms. Know what an AMOL, ADOL is. Authorized medical allowance list, authorized dental allowance list. Any questions?
Why is always a section? It's like on like when you get your score back, like it's only a section of like maybe like 15 or so questions or something like that. So if you get a bunch of it, it's actually really helpful.
Yep, take a look at this, understand it. Alright, go ahead and break for chalk, 'cause this next one's huge. Be back at 12:45.
Hey, it's gonna be huge. What chapter is
Chapter 6, or, yeah, chapter 6. Anatomy and physiology.
Hey, bro.
Here's it now.
3 hours.
Alright.
Did you read the Huffy? You read your Huffy today?
Were you sticking around here the whole lunch period?
Alright.